And this week, a Harney County judge dealt another blow to Measure 114. That's the gun reform measure narrowly passed by voters last month. The latest ruling is tonight's big story. We've been following Measure 114 closely since the days and weeks before Election Day and ever since, and we know this story is probably going to go on for a long time. In fact, we're so confident that we asked one of our talented editors to make us that special animation you just saw. Pretty cool, huh? Not that we're trying to glorify guns or anything else. We just had to see that one more time because we think it's cool. Anyway, several legal challenges stand in front of Measure 114 on the federal and state level, but right now it's the state lawsuit that has 114 paused. And to be clear, no part of 114 is in effect. Right now, gun laws in Oregon are exactly the same as what they were before Election Day. The permit process to buy a gun that 114 requires is on hold, and it's going to stay that way until the state says the process is ready to go. That likely won't be very soon. And even after the process is ready, that element of the measure has to make its way through the courts to decide if it's constitutional. But forget that for a moment. Let's get to the latest ruling by the Harney County judge. This week, Judge Robert Raccio heard arguments on the part of 114 that bans magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. Plaintiffs, those are the folks who are against 114, they asked for an injunction or a pause on that part of the measure until the courts can decide if it violates the state constitution. Long story short, the judge said, yeah, that's a good point you make. You can have your injunction. Now, let's look deeper into the judge's ruling and reasoning on this. And by the way, no, we can't get to every single point. It's a 25-page ruling. Go read it yourself. But we are going to highlight a few. And remember, this case is focused on the measure's constitutionality based on the state constitution. This is not about the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. All right, here we go. Here's the exact wording of the state constitution in question, specifically Article 1, Section 27, right to bear arms, military subordinate to civil power. The people shall have the right to bear arms for the defense of themselves and the state, but the military shall be kept in strict subordination to the civil power. Pretty short, that's the whole thing. The judge wrote that in looking at the historical background of the state constitution and state law, case law surrounding it, the defendants, those are the people who want Measure 114 to become law, well, the judge says they're wrong to argue that the state constitution was written at a time before high-capacity magazines were in use. He wrote, the plaintiffs, those again are the folks trying to block 114, they demonstrate that firearms with magazines capable of over 10 rounds of ammunition were in existence at the adoption of the Oregon Constitution in 1857. Article 1, Section 27 was adopted without any noted debate by the delegates. The court infers that from silent record that no concerns were raised over the types of firearms allowed for self or state defense. The analysis of this court is that the framers and the population were aware of and even anticipating more powerful firearms, including with larger magazine capacities. As such, he goes on, the court finds that the firearms today are the direct descendants of the firearms from the time frame of statehood, multi-shot handguns and rifles. The type of magazine is essential to the protective power of the firearm, as was testified to by one of the defendant's witnesses. So the judge is saying, look, the argument that high-capacity magazines were not around when the state constitution was written and therefore we can ban them, he says that argument is not accurate. The next issue that he took up, and this is again from the defendants, those are the folks supporting the law, well, they're arguing that banning high-capacity magazines would eliminate a grave risk to Oregon citizens, basically the risk of getting shot. So on that point, the judge wrote simply, the facts do not support their conclusion. But he went on to say that the state constitution allows for reasonable restrictions to promote public safety. However, in his view, the evidence presented to him does not add up, writing that the large capacity magazine bans promote public safety is mere speculation, does not restrain dangerous practices or regulate the carrying or use of firearms, only the possession of a ubiquitous weapon design. Supporters of the law argue the high-capacity ban would reduce mass shootings, but the judge says the sample size of the study presented in court is just too small to really say that it's definitive. By the way, that study looked at 604 mass shootings. It concluded it seems like large capacity magazine bans reduce mass shootings, but the judge argued that there's no scientific certainty that a ban like that would have an impact on fatalities and casualties. The judge also said that data supports the idea that a ban like this would be unduly burdensome on Oregonians. He pointed out that roughly 20% of Oregonians own a gun and that Measure 114 would have an immediate impact on the liberty interests of those gun owners and, quote, make it harder for the weaker individuals in our society to defend themselves against attackers. He also said about 5% currently own high-capacity magazines and that they would be presumed guilty of a Class A misdemeanor unless they can prove otherwise, basically saying they would need a receipt or something like that showing that they had it before the law took effect. Now, another point the judge made, and this is the last one we'll highlight tonight, is that any gun magazine could be made to hold more than 10 rounds. And because of that, any and every gun magazine would be illegal under the new law, which essentially would make guns illegal. And that violates the state's constitution. But the judge's opinion is that we shared is only for the injunction here that we're talking about. There's going to be more hearings to determine whether or not the magazine ban actually violates the state constitution. I know it's complicated and convoluted, but that's the law. There's one more part to 114 to keep in mind as well. The measure has a so-called severability clause. So that means if the court finds that one part of the measure is unconstitutional, well, it could just drop away and the rest of the measure would still remain in place. Each part of 114 eventually will have to be weighed for constitutionality to determine when, if at all, any part of it takes effect. And according to one law professor that we talked to at Willamette University's College of Law, that could take a while.
I think it's inevitable that the Oregon Supreme Court will be asked to decide this, but that's probably years away.
So, get ready for that. The next update we expect from Measure 114 is going to come on Friday, December 23rd. That's when a hearing is scheduled for the judge to consider arguments about the so-called Charleston loophole that 114 would close if enacted. That loophole means if you've been waiting longer than 3 days for a background check to be finished after you're trying to buy a gun, that the gun dealer can legally give you that gun after those 3 days, even if the background check is not done. 114 would not allow them to release the gun to you until the background check is finished. The judge's ruling on that is expected in the first week of 2023. What do you think about all this? We'd love to hear your thoughts about the latest with Measure 114. What do you think of the judge's opinion about the high-capacity magazine ban? Did he change your mind? Let us know. Send us an email. Our address is thestory@kgw.com, or you could call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Now, when it comes to our homeless crisis, it would be nice to think that our government leaders are working together to solve it. Yesterday, a vote by the Multnomah County Commission pulled back the curtain a little bit and revealed quite clearly that is not happening. Here's some background. Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler wants to build 6 outdoor camps, big camps, and also ban street camping, but he needs money to help pay for those camps. The county has $28 million extra in its budget, and that money is earmarked to fund homeless and housing assistance. So Wheeler asked for $21 million of that for his camps. At the end of the day, the county leaders said, no. The extra money comes from more than expected taxes that were collected from something called the Supportive Housing Services Tax. The Joint Office of Homeless Services also asked the county for that money. They say it's needed for rent assistance and other programs that keep people in housing. The county decision followed several hours of staff reports and public testimony. Most of it favored the rent assistance and not the mayor's camps.
I'm not camping when I'm out there. Camping, you leave on Friday and you come back on Sunday. And that's camping. You know, I'm out there surviving. You know, that's not camping. That's living. You know, and yeah, you lock me up. Yeah, you know, right afterwards you let me out. Yeah, I'm moving you right back to the same spot I was at before. You know, right in the same spot. You know, so what's that going to do? Locking, you know, making it illegal to camp. What's that going to solve?
In the end, the county board voted unanimously to fund the joint office rather than the mayor's plan. $16 million will go to rent assistance and the other needs. $12 million will be saved for next year. County board members said it was most important to keep people from getting evicted.
If we don't prevent more people from becoming homeless, we will never staunch the flow. That seems like common sense to me. And it's a lot less expensive and a lot easier, not easy, but easier, to keep people housed than to house them once they've lost their housing. This $15 million does not come close to filling the actual need for emergency rent assistance. So people are still going to be evicted because they can't pay the rent. But with this $15 million, we can keep those 3,400 households in their homes. It seems, again, like clear common sense when we're dealing with a homelessness crisis not to pump another 3,400 households onto the streets.
We have an obligation to do what we can to provide support and stability to those families who have been knocked on their backs as they continue to work to get back on their feet. This is one step. This emergency rent assistance will reach and help prevent evictions, i.e. prevent homelessness, for 3,400 families and households.
The board's vote now puts the county at odds with Portland City Council, which overwhelmingly approved Mayor Wheeler's plan. Wheeler and Commissioner Dan Ryan sent us this statement. We are disappointed that the Multnomah County Board failed to fully fund our budget request for an initiative that has received overwhelming public support. Though our work continues, this is the right strategy for Portland, and we will continue working toward compassionate solutions. 24 days from now, Oregon Governor Kate Brown is going to walk out of office for the last time. She'll be replaced by new Governor Tina Kotek. Now, I've covered Brown several times over her decades of public service, and I wanted one last sit down with her before she left office. It's not been an easy time for her. Polls have listed Governor Brown as one of the least popular governors in the nation. We talked for about an hour, and we'll share several of her comments with you next week. But tonight, I just wanted to give you a peek at what it was like. By the way, I have a lot of respect for Governor Brown, but I also enjoy calling people on it when they pivot and do not answer questions. Here's one of those moments. It happened near the end of our interview. I was just going to ask about the candidates, even Tina Kotek, sort of running away from Kate Brown. I'm not Kate Brown. What was that like for you to hear that?
Look, I am really proud of the work that my administration has done. My goal was to make Oregon a better place for everyone and ensure that Oregon is a place where all of our children can thrive. So I am very pleased and proud of my administration, and I am confident that I will be handing the baton off to the Kotek administration, and she will competently lead the state. My administration has centered our historically underserved communities. We have worked to make sure that our communities that have been devastated by the pandemic, by wildfire.
This is a beautiful answer, Governor. But it's on my show, it's what we call a pivot. Because the question was, what was it like to hear the candidates for governor saying, I'm not Kate Brown?
I'm really proud that I've had this opportunity to lead Oregon through one of the most difficult times, and I'm really grateful that the voters of Oregon have given me this chance. It's been a true honor and a privilege.
Yeah, Governor Brown's a tough pivoter. She just sticks right to that. I did move on after that because it was clear I could keep asking that question until midnight and the governor was not going to answer it. But to her credit, she does answer many other questions that I posed to her, and we'll have those for you during special segments next week. I hope that you'll tune in live or later online. And if you're going to be out of town for the holidays next week, that's all right. You can watch the full interview right now on the KGW YouTube page. Just look for it under The Story, and you'll find it right there.
Still to come on The Story, the city of Milwaukie joining big cities like LA and San Francisco banning natural gas hookups at new homes.
I mean, we don't have much time left based on the science in climate change. So if not now, then when?
As you might imagine, the state's largest gas provider is not pleased, even asking residents to submit a survey that one council member is calling deceptive. We'll explain when The Story returns.
Milwaukee's City Council has voted to transition the city away from natural gas, making it the second largest city in Oregon to require new homes to be built all electric. But the vote was not without some controversy, as several powerful organizations lined up to oppose the move, with one of them doing so in a way that could be a precursor to an upcoming ballot measure if they follow through. Environmental reporter Cale Williams explains.
They've done it in San Francisco and Los Angeles. They've done it in New York and Eugene. And with their vote earlier this month.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. It passes unanimously.
Milwaukie became the latest American city to ban natural gas hookups in construction of new homes. The city also approved a measure to replace natural gas in city-owned buildings through retrofits over the coming years.
This piece that we're doing today stops the bleeding.
That's outgoing Milwaukie Mayor Mark Gamba, and the bleeding he's referring to comes from methane, one of the key components in natural gas. Buildings are a key contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, according to Greer Ryan with the environmental nonprofit Climate Solutions.
Buildings are the second largest source of greenhouse gas emissions after transportation. We see emissions from the electricity we use, of course, but also from direct use of gas, natural gas, which is also known as methane gas.
Methane is a potent greenhouse gas, up to 86 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Experts have said the world needs to cut its methane use by a third by 2030 to avoid the worst impacts of climate change.
I mean, we don't have much time left based on the science in climate change. So if not now, then when?
That's Councilman Adam Khosrowbadi. He voted in favor of the resolution, and he said that Milwaukie residents who've reached out to him since the vote have been happy about the move.
Me personally, I've gotten more praise for the decision as opposed to pushback.
But that doesn't mean the measure was without its detractors. Chief among them, Northwest Natural, the state's largest gas provider. Nina Carlson, government affairs manager for the utility, spoke against the resolutions just before the vote.
Our concerns really are focused on your decarbonization plan through the removal of energy choice.
Northwest Natural was joined by a number of other local organizations in protesting the resolutions, including real estate groups, the Clackamas County Business Alliance, and some in the construction trades. In a letter to the council, the groups asked for the vote to be delayed until after the new council was sworn in next year. And they pointed to the fact that much of Oregon's electricity is currently generated by burning natural gas.
So anybody who has...
But Khosrowbadi pointed out that the state has a law requiring all electricity production to be carbon-free by 2040, and that natural gas as a home heating source is on the decline.
If we don't do it now and we build a bunch of houses, right, and we put a bunch of gas infrastructure, in 10 years we rip it out. Do we want to do it now, or do we want to do it in 10 years when it's going to cost a lot more money to do?
Khosrowbadi also said he was irked by a survey Northwest Natural put out in the run-up to the vote. It included a question that asked residents who they would be more likely to agree with in a dispute, the natural gas utility or the city council.
It's being claimed that, oh, we want to work together, it's a partnership, but you're putting a survey out deliberately questioning the trust that the public has in its own governing body. To me, that's very deceptive.
Another question in the survey included language from a hypothetical ballot measure that would outlaw bans on natural gas. Khosrowbadi said he thinks that would be a non-starter with Milwaukie voters.
If Northwest Natural thinks that this is a community that's going to, that with that being on the ballot, it's going to vote no on banning natural gas, they're mistaken.
Northwest Natural declined to provide KGW with the results of the study, but a spokesman said in a statement, "It's important to us to understand how our customers feel about council proposals. We routinely check in with the communities we serve. Both the council and Northwest Natural were well regarded, and residents' feeling about the city was generally positive."
Making those buildings.
Ryan said she thinks, aside from the good it will do for the climate, most people will enjoy living in all-electric homes, especially with high-efficiency appliances like heat pumps and induction ranges.
I think people are really going to like having buildings be more efficient and electric. They're going to make people's lives better. So it's low-hanging fruit.
Cale Williams, KGW News.
Still to come on the story, a preview of tonight's episode of Straight Talk with Laurel Porter, featuring many of the incoming women in Congress in our area, representing districts in our area in both Oregon and Washington. They talk about the transition to D.C. and much more when the story returns. The midterm elections held a number of big surprises for our area when it comes to the congressional races. Two incumbents did not make it past the primary, Kurt Schrader in Oregon and Jamie Herrera Butler in Washington, and both of their districts flipped to the other party. Oregon also got a new congressional seat. And we're sending a record number of women to D.C. 4 of our 6 representatives will be female. We got them together today to talk about the transition, both for themselves personally and for their constituents, on our Straight Talk.
It's a lot, but there's a lot of support, and people want you to succeed, and we're all in this together too. Yeah. And there's a lot of great members and a lot of women who are giving really good advice.
We're definitely there to help.
Yeah,
and I want to note with these members that like with the Andrea, her district is brand new. It's not like there's an existing district or district office. And with Lori and Marie, they're both going in from a different party, which is a different transition from then if you were taking over a district office in a district from somebody who's in the same party. So everybody has their unique situations, but I just want all these amazing women to know that we're there to help. We want your transition into Congress to be smooth and to work together. The Pacific Northwest, we oftentimes work together on issues and look forward to doing that. And
and Congressman Schrader and I had coffee before I left as well. We've known each other for years, and I actually will be taking over his office in Oregon City for an easy transition. Is what the people who were in the district before are used to. There should be no reason why we should disrupt that if there's no need to do so. Of course, we'll open up other offices, and I often remind people, they ask about the fly. They ask, oh my gosh, how are you going to do it? And I think to myself, on a couple different, well, first of all, we're the 118th Congress, so 117 before us. We're managed it just fine. And, if we can replicate the goodness and get rid of what maybe didn't work. But as women, we do lots of things often. We raise families, we build businesses. I was a mayor in dealing with that. So, we've done this before. We can think a little bit differently. And I think that that's a good perspective to have. And we are running multi-million-dollar businesses in each of our offices. So with running a business, previous to that, it has helped to settle in with all the employee laws and hiring and understanding exactly what the American people and Oregonians are expecting from us when we get there. So to hit the ground running it's been controlled chaos, but it has worked. They onboard every 2 years. It shouldn't be a shocker to most people that they do this, and they do it well back in Washington, and they welcomed us again, all the current members. And even some of the former members. Again, Congressman Schrader did not have to sit down with me. Yeah, we wanted to have coffee together. I wanted to make sure I'm looking at the casework that he was working on, to transition that. There are people who are counting on their representatives to continue. They don't want to start over just because one, we're different parties, and two, we're different representatives. So I also had a nice coffee with Congressman Blumenauer over Zoom, so to speak. But I've met with everybody. We all joined in. I met with Congresswoman-elect Bahoyle as well. So, people will make what they want to make of it being Republicans and Democrats. And I promise you we won't agree on probably a lot of things. But what we will do is be respectful. I just don't see any other way to go about doing business with my fellow women, and that's to respect each other for the job that we have.
And Marie.
You can watch the entire conversation tonight at 7 on Straight Talk and catch a bonus round with extra conversation on our KGW YouTube channel. All right, keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com. We're going to wrap things up right after this. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our story, well, that never ends. I'm off for the first part of next week, but I'll be back here on Wednesday. Please join the team Monday and Tuesday in my absence, and enjoy your weekend.
This